You were going through everyone's cars recording stuff. Don't move. You were going
This
through
is battery,
everyone's cars.
guys. All right, if you're a supervisor, I'd suggest that you stop him.
They were looking through everyone's cars recording.
That's
things.
not a. It's
Everyone's
called the
license
plain
plates.
view doctrine.
They were looking at everyone's
It's
license
in plain
plates,
view in
recording
public. We can see it. It's all okay to.
Steel clicks around a wrist. The sound is small, mechanical, final. In a government parking lot in Lake County, Indiana, a man who arrived with nothing but a camera now finds himself restrained like a suspect. No crime has been committed, no weapon has been drawn, no threat has been made, but the handcuffs are real and they're not coming off. This is how authority operates when it feels observed. Not with conversation, not with questions, with metal and control. The morning had started simply enough. Two men, we'll call them Henry and Ty, arrived at a government complex with cameras and curiosity. Their purpose was documentation. Public buildings, public parking lots, public vehicles purchased with public money. Nothing hidden, nothing secret, just citizens looking at what belongs to them. The complex houses, county offices, courtrooms, administrative facilities, the kind of buildings that exist in every American town, funded by the taxes of people who rarely think about what happens inside. Parking lots surround the structures, filled with government vehicles and employee cars. No gates block entry, no guards stand at checkpoints, no signs announce restricted areas or prohibited activities. Henry and Ty walk through openly, cameras recording. They're not hiding behind bushes or peeking through windows. They're standing in daylight, documenting what anyone driving past could see. The act itself is mundane, the legal equivalent of taking a photograph of a building from a public sidewalk. But somewhere inside those buildings, someone is watching, and that someone doesn't like what they see. The first indication of trouble comes in an unexpected form. A sheriff's cruiser, parked in the lot, suddenly accelerates away, not toward them, away from them, as if the presence of cameras represents something to flee rather than engage. The departure is quick, almost furtive. It raises a question that will echo throughout what follows. What is there to hide in a public parking lot? Henry and Ty continue their documentation. They note the layout, the vehicles, the unrestricted access. Everything they observe confirms what they already believed. This is public space, accessible to any citizen who wants to walk through it. The cameras record without incident. The morning seems uneventful. Then the uniforms arrive. The first deputy approaches with a question that carries an accusation. What are you doing? The words are simple, but the tone establishes territory. This is our space. You are the intruder. Explain yourself. Henry responds calmly. He's recording, exercising his rights, documenting public property. The explanation is clear and accurate. It should end the conversation. Instead, it intensifies it. More deputies arrive. The presence multiplies. What began as one uniform questioning two civilians becomes a wall of authority surrounding them. The cameras keep recording, their own, and the body cameras worn by the officers. Everyone knows this is being documented, and yet the escalation continues. The demand for identification comes quickly, not as a request, as a requirement. Show us who you are. Prove you belong here. The assumption embedded in the demand is telling. Citizens must justify their presence on public property. The burden of proof has been inverted. Henry asks the question that should matter. What crime have I committed? The answer comes in actions rather than words. Hands are grabbed, wrists are twisted, steel closes around flesh. The handcuffs are applied before any charge is articulated, before any warning is given, before any opportunity to comply with a lawful order, because no lawful order has been issued. This is the moment the encounter becomes something else. Documentation becomes detention. Observation becomes obstruction. A citizen exercising rights becomes a suspect, requiring restraint. Watch the body language of the deputies. There's no hesitation, no consultation, no pause to consider whether this response is proportional. The handcuffs come out as naturally as a greeting. This is reflex, not reason. This is how they've been trained to respond when someone challenges their assumption of control. Henry's partner, Ty, watches from nearby. His camera continues recording. He knows that whatever happens next will be preserved, that the footage will outlive this moment, that every action taken by every person present is being documented for future review. This knowledge should moderate behavior. It doesn't. A deputy approaches Ty's camera. What happens next violates every principle of transparency that law enforcement claims to uphold. The camera is touched, adjusted, turned off. The act is deliberate. The intent is clear. Whatever is about to happen, they don't want it recorded, but they've forgotten something. Henry's camera is still running. And their own body cameras, required by policy to document every encounter, are capturing everything. The attempt to suppress documentation has itself been documented. The cover-up is now part of the evidence. The parking lot has become a stage. Two men in handcuffs stand surrounded by deputies. The morning sun casts long shadows across asphalt. Somewhere nearby, county employees go about their business, unaware that a constitutional confrontation is unfolding in the lot where they parked their cars. Henry asks the question again, his voice steady despite the restraints. Why am I in handcuffs? The question is simple. The answer should be simpler. In American law, detention requires justification. You cannot simply restrain a citizen because their presence makes you uncomfortable. You need a reason, a crime committed, a crime in progress, a reasonable belief that a crime is about to occur. The deputy's response reveals the emptiness of the justification. He mentions inmates, released prisoners who sometimes return to damaged vehicles. The connection to Henry and Ty is non-existent. They're not former inmates, they're not damaging anything, they're standing in a parking lot with cameras. The explanation is a post hoc rationalization, a story invented to justify an action already taken. Henry points out the obvious. If you were concerned about us running, you wouldn't have us in handcuffs standing here calmly. The logic is irrefutable. Handcuffs are for flight risks and violent suspects. Henry and Ty have done nothing to suggest they're either. They've been cooperative, calm, and transparent about their purpose. The restraints serve no safety function. They serve only to establish dominance. The supervisor arrives. This should be the moment where reason prevails. Sergeants are supposed to be experienced, measured, capable of de-escalating situations that their subordinates have inflamed. Instead, the supervisor reinforces the approach. No apology for the handcuffs, no acknowledgement that the response might have been excessive, just more questions designed to justify what's already been done. The accusation shifts. Now Henry and Ty aren't just suspicious, they were going through the vehicles, looking inside windows. The language is crafted to sound sinister, to transform observation into intrusion. But looking through a car window in a public parking lot isn't a crime. It isn't trespassing. It isn't anything that justifies detention, much less handcuffs. Henry responds with a statement that cuts through the manufactured narrative. Looking inside windows is not a crime. The words hang in the air. No one disputes them because they can't be disputed. The deputies know the law. They know that nothing Henry and Ty have done crosses any legal line. They know the detention is unjustified, and they continue anyway. This is the machinery of escalation at work. Once the handcuffs are on, the commitment is made. Removing them means admitting error. Admitting error means accepting accountability. Accepting accountability means facing consequences. So the handcuffs stay on, and the justifications keep shifting, and the encounter continues toward an outcome that serves no one. The deputies claim there was a sign. Somewhere in the lot, they insist a notice prohibited public access. Henry and Ty respond simply, "We didn't see any sign." The footage will later confirm their account. The entrance they used had no restrictions posted. The path they walked had no warnings. The lot they documented appeared and was open to the public. But even if a sign existed, even if it was visible, even if they had somehow missed it, the appropriate response would have been a verbal warning, a request to leave, an explanation of the rules, not handcuffs, not detention, not the treatment of citizens as criminals for the act of observation. The questioning continues. Where did you walk? How did you get here? What's your purpose? Each question implies suspicion without stating a crime. Each answer is met with skepticism rather than acceptance. The conversation isn't designed to gather information, it's designed to reinforce authority. To remind Henry and Ty that despite their rights, despite their cameras, despite their knowledge of the law, they are powerless in this moment. One deputy makes a statement that reveals the heart of the conflict. He mentions that 6 officers have been killed recently. The implication is clear. The deputies feel threatened. They see cameras not as tools of accountability, but as precursors to violence. They see citizens documenting public spaces not as exercising rights, but as conducting surveillance for future attacks. This fear is real. It shapes how they respond. But fear doesn't suspend the Constitution. Fear doesn't authorize handcuffs without cause. Fear doesn't transform lawful behavior into criminal activity. The tragedy is that officers who feel unsafe have created a situation where citizens are made to feel unsafe, where the very rights designed to protect everyone become casualties of mutual suspicion. The handcuffs eventually come off, not because the deputies acknowledge wrongdoing, not because a supervisor recognizes the violation, simply because the encounter has run its course and there's no charge to file, no crime to prosecute, no justification that will survive review. Henry and Ty are told to leave. They comply. The parking lot returns to its ordinary function. Cars are parked. Employees come and go. The morning continues as if nothing happened. But something happened. 2 citizens were detained for exercising constitutional rights. Cameras were turned off to prevent documentation. Explanations were manufactured to justify restraints. And somewhere in the Lake County government complex, the footage from body cameras was saved to servers that would eventually be reviewed by attorneys. The charges came first: trespassing. The accusation formally converted Henry and Ty's presence in a public parking lot into a criminal act. The charge sheet didn't mention signs they couldn't have seen. It didn't acknowledge that they were restrained before any warning was given. It simply stated that they were somewhere they shouldn't have been, doing something they weren't allowed to do. Courts don't always accept such claims. The charges were dismissed. Whatever standard exists for trespassing, Henry and Ty hadn't met it. Their behavior was lawful. Their detention was not. The criminal case ended with an acknowledgement, implicit but undeniable, that the deputies had overreacted. But dismissal isn't vindication. Being charged with a crime, even wrongfully, leaves marks. The arrest exists in records. The hours spent in custody can't be recovered. The experience of being handcuffed for holding a camera doesn't disappear when a judge dismisses the case. The system processed them as criminals, and the fact that it eventually spit them out doesn't erase the processing. The lawsuit followed in January 2024. Henry and Ty sued the county, the sheriff, and the arresting officers. The claim centered on the obvious: unlawful detention, violation of constitutional rights, the use of handcuffs without justification. The damages sought weren't just financial, they were declaratory. A statement from a court that what happened in that parking lot was wrong. These lawsuits rarely end quickly. Qualified immunity protects officers from personal liability in most circumstances. Government entities have legal teams and resources that individual plaintiffs lack. The cases wind through motions and depositions and discovery, each step extending the timeline, each delay favoring those who want the matter to quietly disappear. But the footage remains. The body cameras captured the moment a deputy turned off Henry's camera. They captured the handcuffs being applied without warning. They captured the shifting explanations, the invented justifications, the failure to identify any crime. Whatever happens in court, the documentation exists. It can be reviewed by supervisors, by trainers, by future juries in future cases. This is what First Amendment audits are designed to reveal. Not that all officers are corrupt. Not that all departments are beyond redemption, but that power, unchecked, tends toward abuse. That the mere presence of cameras changes behavior, not always for the better. That citizens who assert their rights may find those rights challenged by the very people sworn to protect them. Henry and Ty knew this before they arrived at the Lake County complex. They knew that filming government buildings sometimes attracts hostile attention. They knew that asserting rights can result in detention, arrest, and prosecution. They did it anyway, because the alternative, accepting that public spaces are accessible only to those who don't ask questions, is worse than any individual encounter. The parking lot is quiet now. The vehicles sit in their spots. The buildings conduct their business. Nothing visible indicates that a confrontation occurred there, that handcuffs were applied, that cameras were disabled, that constitutional rights were weighed against convenience and found wanting. But the record exists. The footage has been preserved. The lawsuit proceeds through courts. And somewhere, other citizens with cameras are walking into other parking lots, documenting what they see, testing whether the rights they've been promised actually exist. The outcome of this case will matter beyond Indiana. It will establish whether officers can detain citizens for observation alone, whether handcuffs can be applied without articulable cause, whether turning off a camera during detention creates liability. The answers will shape encounters that haven't happened yet between officers and citizens who don't know each other's names. The fight continues, not just for Henry and Ty, but for everyone who believes that public property belongs to the public, that cameras are protected, that documentation is not a crime, the handcuffs are off, the charges are dismissed, the lawsuit is pending. The question remains, what happens next time?